When I was a kid, I loved reading all the Asterix books and the Tintin books. So as an adult, I thought I would check out some graphic novels to see if I got the same sort of pleasure from reading those. However, for whatever reason, none of them really clicked with me. Whenever I read recommendation lists of graphic novels to check out, it always seems that Neil Gaiman's Sandman novels are always at the top of those recommendation lists. This is not the Sandman novels. Rather, it is the Graveyard Book 1 and 2 by Neil Gaiman. The Graveyard Book, Books 1 and 2, are really the first graphic novels that have grabbed my interest, and they almost didn't in the first couple of pages. These books are about a very young boy whose family was murdered and who managed to crawl into a nearby graveyard and was subsequently raised by ghosts and spirits and vampires and other non-living creatures. However, with the murder of the boy's entire family being shown in graphic detail in the first few pages of the book, I almost let it go there. But I sort of glanced ahead in the book before I got rid of it, and it looks interesting enough that I stuck with it, and I'm glad I did. It was really the story that drew me in. I've always kind of loved graveyards, just the quietness and peacefulness of them, and the history of them too. The coolest graveyards I've been to were in Scotland, just because they were abandoned, run down, but you walked through them and there were hundreds of years of history in them. Plus the fact that I have just a touch of the PTSD means that I'm often not keen on hanging out with people in general. So the idea of a young boy having his freedom in a graveyard, not having to interact with the living, and getting in touch with some supernatural things was all very compelling for me. As for the graphic side of things, I find that a lot of graphic novels look a little bit similar in their style. I'm sure that's my ignorance speaking and my lack of experience. But as I was reading these books, I found myself thinking what a challenge it must have been to draw pictures that primarily took place at nighttime. So the author had to convey the fact that it was nighttime without drawing completely black pictures, as well as the night sky and all the stars. And then there was the fact that a lot of the ghostly characters were sort of translucent characters, so the artist had to work that into the images as well. The primary artist in the book is P. Craig Russell, but there are actually several artists who each worked on different chapters of the novels. And I didn't actually at first know that there was a book 1 and 2 involved here. I had just gotten book 1 out of the library. I got to the end of it and it said continue to book 2, so I had to rush off to the library to get book 2, which is what this is. I've already returned book 1 and complete the story. What's interesting is that this is actually based on a children's novel by Neil Gaiman. And while I'm not sure how that first part of the book with the family's murder would go over with some kids, I do find myself wondering if I would have just enjoyed reading the novel more than the graphic novel version of the book. The thing with graphic novels for me is that a lot of them don't really have a super compelling story, and I guess the writing often doesn't really draw me in. There's also a pretty decent lesson woven throughout the story about living your life while you're alive. At the end of the day, though, I guess it was the story of this kid growing up in the graveyard that really felt magical to me and made it an enjoyable experience to read for me. So the Graveyard Book, definitely recommended. It's a little after 9 p.m. on a Saturday evening. I have pneumonia, my wife has pneumonia, both of our children have pneumonia. All 4 of us are on antibiotics. And here I am, parked on a street across from a club, waiting to get into a punk show. It is the weekend before Halloween, and there are college kids everywhere walking around in costumes. I am about twice their age, and even if I was healthy, I really ought to be in bed right now. I've never been to this particular venue before, but hopefully they have a stool for me to plop my old butt down and have a nice seated punk show tonight. And with any luck, they'll be finished up before midnight so I can get home and get some much needed sleep. It is now 1:30 a.m. and I'm back in my driveway at home. It was a long night, but fun. The first band were a good solid small town punk band. Second band up were super fast, super tight. I wish I could have heard the vocals, but otherwise they killed it. And then we had the Filthy Radicals finishing off the night with a solid set. Even though it was only a small mosh pit of maybe 8 or 10 people, I just couldn't stay out of it. And I come out with a sprained thumb. It's as far as I can bend it, which is actually about as far as I can normally bend it, but it hurts. Left ankle's pretty sore. At one point, I fell down and found myself on top of a pool table on my back. So, yeah, somehow fell onto a pool table. But it was a fun night, fun show. Love supporting the small town punk shows. Good night. Hey, Josh here, just wanting to thank you for watching my video. If you could give it a quick thumb and subscribe, I'd appreciate that a lot. And on behalf of my good buddy Mort and myself, I'd like to wish you all a fun and safe Halloween. Cheers. The Graveyard Book, books 1 and 2, are really, for God's sake. What else was I gonna say? Oh, it's freaking frigid out here! No, that's what. Fuck off. Yeah. What's going on here? A really happy Halloween, and wait, that's not what I meant to say. I want to thank you for watching my video. And, for gosh sakes me.